Okay, so we have a couple more questions later, but before we get started with Eric, Eric and I have known him since pretty much my beginning of me working at IMS, now Zodiac In-Flight Innovations. At the time I was there, I was working for the vice president of engineering, who unfortunately while I was there passed away after running a marathon. So LA Marathon next week, who's doing that? Handful of you. Let's let's not overdo it with running too fast because we don't want to get, have something bad happen. But Eric took over and he really made a huge difference in just keeping our company running. A lot of us were just like, what the heck are we going to do with all the stuff we had to deliver? And Eric came in, and since Eric was there, he came for about a couple years, and then he left. And I really admired Eric's technical expertise and managerial expertise, and I have a lot of good things to say about Eric. What really changed my life was when him and I spoke in his office regarding how to use Evernote. Evernote is a tool that some of you guys use, which pretty much organizes your life, organizes all the things. And what he showed me was like, wow, this is such a game changer in how people can get really organized with all the things that they have going on. And for a lot of us, I think that's what happens. We get so busy and we get stressed out just because, we're overwhelmed with all the information we're taking in. And I think what Eric's going to show you on how he uses his life to manage everything, how he uses Evernote to manage everything, I think will be really cool. So I hope you can, when you're done with this conference, you're going to all want to download the app and use it to, at least to some extent, because I think if we're all organized, it'll only help us do what we're doing better. So let's welcome Eric.
All right. Oh, there we go. When my grandfather passed away 11 years ago, we went to his house to clean things up, and we found the place stacked from floor to ceiling with what I will politely call stuff. And there were walkways carved between islands of stuff, and you couldn't barely walk through the house without knocking things over. So my father had to go rent a dumpster the size of a tractor trailer to haul away the junk. And most of the stuff, but not all of the stuff, ended up being junk. In the process of cleaning up, we uncovered 15 guitars. My grandfather plays the violin. I didn't know him a whole lot in the end part of his life, but I've never seen him touch a guitar. We went through the guitars. Some of them were electric. They were this kind of Gumby style flying V electric guitar. I have no idea what that was doing in his house. He had 140 suitcases. Some of the suitcases were full of other smaller suitcases. There were trash bags full of what was mostly, but not always entirely trash, so we had to go through the trash bags and pull stuff out. There were 250 unopened, pristine cans of cat food. They don't have a cat. My brother-in-law, he stood atop this dumpster we were moving stuff, and he stood on top of the trash mound, and he jokingly said to my father, one day we'll have to come and do this to your house. He didn't think that was very funny, and he did not laugh, but I thought it was hilarious, and I made a critical error on that day. I utterly failed to perform a very simple genetic extrapolation. So see if you can figure that out. It turns out that my grandfather was a hoarder, and even that word hasn't been used in my family except between me and my sister over the course of the last maybe 6 months, and an awful lot in the last 2 months preparing for this talk, and we're going back and forth and busting that word out and realizing, oh my goodness, what are we in for here? This is a real thing. My father was a hoarder as I was growing up, but it came on very slowly, and in a lot of ways it was a good house to grow up in. My basement was lined with hanging shelves, with cardboard boxes full of stuff. And as a kid growing up in that house, my dad was a chemist, so there were some boxes full of chemistry stuff. There were beakers and things. They were climbers, so I had boxes full of rope and carabiners, and in some ways we had awesome toys to play with as kids. And in some ways it's the house you grow up in, so you're kind of blind to those things. And it was neat. There was lots of stuff, but it wasn't cluttery. So we didn't see that behavior coming on. It's very recently that we recognized that behavior was even part of my family. The bad thing was that for as fun as it was, for all the good things that we had to mess around with, I was headed for perilous waters, and I didn't realize it. I really didn't realize it until rather recently. Now, when I first came into engineering, I had a colleague that a couple of you know, Joe Winston. He's done some work with VII, formerly IMS in the past. And he had this awesome proverb that he taught me, which is the weakest of minds outlast the strongest, the weakest of ink outlasts the strongest of minds. And that's very true and useful to us in engineering. The job that we do is often the job of a detective, and we're building systems and we're doing all kinds of stuff, and down the road, before we knew there was a problem, it turns out there's a problem. And we're often going back to the records that we have and trying to tease out what really happened. And having written stuff down, keeping a good logbook, that's essential to the work that we do. So over time, I started developing into a person who captures data. It's a big part of what we do. Capturing data is very important. Traces, scopes, scope traces, notebooks, code samples, all that stuff is immensely useful. So over time, I turned into a bit of a data geek. And Erwin is too. He's drawing charts up here. I have 4 years of data on the hours that I work. For the last 2 years, I've been running stat analysis on it. I have 2 years of data on where I've eaten lunch. Why is a bit weird, but there's everywhere that we've eaten lunch as a group at ZII over the course of the last 2 years, and I have fun running statistical analysis on that. So in 2007, I started a business with 3 former colleagues, and Joe Winston was among them. And I stumbled across David Allen's productivity book, Getting Things Done. And I absolutely fell in love with it. Getting Things Done, GTD as it's called by people who follow the blogs, is all about managing data. It says, hey, you've got piles of things coming in, particularly the deluge of stuff that hits you in the form of email, messages, people giving you things to do, giving you information, appointments, reading material, invoices, data sheets, all this stuff is flying at you, and it says, hey, there's a way to go manage this into chunks, and if you're familiar with it, you draw this awesome flow chart that says, hey, when a piece comes in, you evaluate it against these criteria, you decide what you're going to do with it, you defer it, you delegate it to somebody else, you file it somewhere. But one of the central tenets of GTD is that you need a good filing system. And so he's very meticulous, with a book written, I don't know, 12, 15 years ago, about putting together a good filing system. And he goes and in very much detail says, hey, you need to go get a filing cabinet. It needs to be comfortable to use. It needs to be quick to access. You need to get a label printer and print very nice labels on it. You need to be able to access it quickly, feel good about using it, have fun using it. So I read the book, and in 2007, I went and I bought my first filing cabinet, and I was very happy. This thing was awesome. I had nice printed labels. I had dividers with letters on them. I used 3 drawers of my 4, and I jokingly took pictures of it, and I sent them to my sister and my family and said, look, I've got my first filing cabinet. I'm headed down, just like my dad. You know, my dad had lots of filing cabinets around the house at the time, 4, 5, 6, and I said, I'm on my way. He owns his own business. He keeps a lot of stuff. So I was kind of joking down the path of becoming a data hoarder, but I was still joking. I didn't really realize what I was getting into at the time. This filing cabinet was my gateway drug to data hoarding. When I went to visit my parents in 2010, my father's dining room looked like this. Now, to all of you, that probably looks completely insane, and there's still a piece of me which thinks, yeah, that's just my parents' house. It looks like that. And like the frog boiling in water, it snuck up slowly over time. But looking at it like this was my first kind of inkling, there's something funny going on here. And I've got my first filing cabinet. I'm headed down this path. I love collecting data. The beast that lives in my brain was no longer hiding below the surface. It was staring me in the eyes. So it was time for me to start doing something about it. But there's a problem with hoarding. It comes with a very, very strong feedback mechanism. So hoarding goes like this. Your kid comes to you and they say, hey, Dad, the plug on my power adapter broke. Can you help me? And you say, yes, in this drawer, I have just what you need. I ordered a power adapter for my Mac a while ago. They came from Hong Kong. They were a couple of bucks. I ordered 3 of them. I got one in my drawer. And you find it and you give it to them, and you are a hero. You are winning. The cost of that is you have a drawer that looks like this somewhere. The winning totally, in my brain, overrides the cost of having a drawer that looks like this because I failed to do this calculation. For all the stuff I keep, there's a small piece of it, 1% or 2 or 3, that I actually end up using. And it feels really, really, really good to be able to use a piece. But there's a lot of stuff sitting in a lot of boxes taking up a lot of room. Now, that's stuff. When it comes to data, I can take those things and I can stick them on my computer, and the story goes totally different. And my daughter comes to me and she says, hey, do we have to bring that Demi Lovato CD back to the library? And I say, let me check. No, it's not due yet. I find it on my computer, and it's stored in Evernote, and I'm winning again. But everything I store sits inside, and now my desk looks like this. And so my data hoarding, I've moved all my files into my computer, and I'm no longer taking up space on my desk. If this is, well, I'll tell you, this is my desk at work, and this is an average day. I didn't try to clean up for this slide. I got a couple pieces of paper on my desk, but that's generally how I operate. I got a pad that I scribble some things on. I got some papers over to the right-hand side that are things that I happen to be working on that I haven't scanned in yet. I have a filing. One of my drawers has files in it, and it's got about an inch worth of paper in it, and it's literally, the category is things made of paper. It's a couple of things on paper that for whatever reason I can't get rid of. I've spent a lot of time over the course of the last 3 to 4 years trying to figure out how do I take that paper filing cabinet, which is really awesome and fabulous. I mean, if it's all you had, paper filing like that, like GTD does it, is a great thing to do. I mean, I knew where stuff was all the time. I could go pull things. It was really, really an awesome tool, but this is even better. So my goal today is to come back from the journey that I've been on and to share with you that I've escaped from my little bit of neuroses there to tell you a story of how to clean those kinds of things up. Now, anybody who knows me really well would say, hey, Eric, I've been to your house. What about your garage? That is a story for a different day. We're going to take one whale at a time, and I'm still working on that one. So, we'll talk about how we go paperless, more or less. And I started thinking about it, and it kind of divides down into 5 core things. And I'm mostly going to talk about the middle one, which is the app, Evernote. But there's really 5 pieces, and a lot of things have happened in the last 4 years that have made this really workable. The first is capture. How do I get things, a lot of times paper, into a system where I can store them? The core is storage. What do I use to store those things? On the bottom side, markup. If you start to go paperless, you often run into this issue where I've got somebody gave me something, I want to do something to it, I've got to annotate feedback for somebody and send it back out. How do I do that in a world where everything is now electronic? Preservation. I need a way to back this stuff up so I don't lose it. In a lot of ways, I'm better protected now than I was in my filing cabinet. My filing cabinet burns down, I lose it. My data backups, I've got a backup at home, I got another backup of that at work. I'm pretty hardened against losing that data ever. And then on the access side, what do I do about getting at my data? And that's turned out to be phenomenally better than the filing cabinet ever was. If I look at the technologies that let me do this today, there are 5, although preservation is really 2 different apps depending on what platform you're running on. On the capture side, we'll talk about a scanner device that Fujitsu makes called the ScanSnap. I told Erwin about it. He's got one too. It's a funny piece of stuff. From an ROI, a return on investment, I can't really justify it. The thing's about 400 bucks. I can't tell you it saved me 400 bucks. It does make my desk look like that, and I love it to death. And if it broke tomorrow, I'd go get another one in an instant. Evernote in the middle, which we'll talk a whole lot about. Sketch on the bottom, which used to be owned by a different company. Evernote bought them out, kept the name, and so now it's run by Evernote. It has a huge amount of integration with Evernote. On the upper right, for backups, Acronis on the PC is insanely awesome. You go get a USB drive, hook it to the PC, back everything up. Time Machine on a Mac, we'll talk about that, same thing. Just hands off, runs in the background all the time. And on the right-hand side, a bunch of technologies around accessing these things, but particularly a thing called display link. And we'll get into what that hardware is. What that hardware is and how it lets me put lots of monitors onto my computer. So, Evernote. Evernote started business about 6 years ago. They started an open beta in June of 2008. I became a member in 2010, which is about 2 years after they started, so I've been using it for about 4 years now. I have 3,300 notes, so it's a little north of 3,000 notes. That data set is about 4.5 gigabytes, which means all the data I own, and I'll put a caveat in there, it's not all the things that I have captured. I have another place where I put some paper things that has to do with security and volume and a bunch of stuff. It's my bank statements and all those things I don't touch very often. But everything I've got in Evernote, which is the stuff I touch every day, takes 4.5 gigs, which means it's big enough to sit on my phone, it's big enough to sit on my pad, it's big enough to sit on my computer. Evernote, we'll get into how it works, but it's a cloud service, so everything syncs up to the cloud, syncs back to my devices. Without a whole lot of work, I now have in my pocket right now a copy of every single piece of data that I captured in Evernote. And what that means and what those pieces of data are, I'm going to share with you a lot of those things, but I have my filing cabinet in my pocket. I can pull out anything I want anywhere I am, and that is massively powerful. Now, a lot of you have tasted little pieces of that. If you haven't run Evernote, you take a picture of something that you need, you have it somewhere else. I've got absolutely everything in my pocket. As a hoarder, boy, is that fabulous. I was thinking about it, and Evernote is so integrated into my life that I've used it for 3 things since I walked in the door of this building. Number one is I put all the notes for the first slide, my cold open, into Evernote and opened them up and read them so I would know what I was going to say when I walked up here. So I've been staring at my first slide most of today. Number 2, I forgot Jason's name. And I didn't want to walk over there and not know it or have to stare at his tag embarrassingly. So as long as I'm telling you about my neurosis, I'll tell you I forgot Jason's name. I have, at ZII, we have a database of everybody's pictures. And it's terrible the way it works. It's very hard to work your way through. But one of the things that Evernote does is if you put JPEGs into it, images, it will do OCR on them, and you can search things by name. So I've taken that database of all the employees at ZII, put them into OneNote. I've got all their pictures and all their names and all their phone numbers, and I pulled it open at the table here. I scrolled down through it until I saw Jason's picture. The other one is I'm sitting with Mike Ryan, and I've never met his wife before. Her name is Ann. I made a note, and I said, Mike Ryan's wife is named Ann. I'm going to see her 1.5 years from now and go, shoot, I should know her name, and I'll pull it out and I'll have it. Winning. All right, so as long as I'm letting you into my personal neurosis, I'm going to let you into my Evernote. And so I thought about going and getting some stock Evernote data and showing you the data they have for developers to work with, some stock sets. In the end, I gave up on that, and I said, I'm going to show you what I do with it. This is my real stuff. I hope I don't have anything embarrassing hanging off on the left-hand side there. I don't think I do. If you catch something, good for you. I'll start with low-hanging fruit, recipes. Since the dawn of computers, people have been talking about people being able to put recipes into computers. For the longest time, it was an absolutely stupid thing to do, and it didn't work very well. It's a good example of what Evernote does well today. One of the things that's weird about Evernote is that I recommend it to people all the time, but there's this weird learning curve that everybody goes through. And somebody this morning was saying the same thing to me. They went through the same learning curve. They don't quite know what to do with it. When I first got it in my hands, it was kind of billed as a web clipping tool. So there's one of the things you can do with it. There's a plugin. You open up Safari or you open up your browser on Internet Explorer, and you can go and you can take an article and you can capture it into Evernote. And I thought, that's okay. I save web things every now and then. That's a small piece of the ways you can get data into Evernote. But I lived in that world for maybe 3 months or so, and then there's a light bulb that goes off for everybody. Everybody who turns into a long-term user at some point, they realize this thing, which is that Evernote's not a web clipper, and it's not a place to put your pictures, and it's not a place to put somebody's contact info. That it's a place to put everything in your life that you don't want to forget. And Evernote's tagline is, remember everything. Their mission in life is to have you remember everything and have everything accessible to you. So once you kind of get over this idea of what a note is, and you start viewing the world of things you want to keep as just snippets, as snapshots of text or audio or files, and you just start pumping it in here, the bigger the database gets, the more useful it is to you. Database is a very businessy word, but there's a ton of things I use it for which have nothing to do with work whatsoever. So one example is recipes. So I've got recipes in here. Until I got into Evernote, my recipes looked like I had a couple of pages stuck in a 3-ring binder in the kitchen. I had a couple of cards. Some things were written on the back of postcards. It was kind of ridiculous. So I started pulling things in, and I've got a mix. If you look down the left-hand side here of notes, some of my things are recipes that I've typed in. Some of them are camera pictures of the newspaper. Some of them are scans of one thing or another, books. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's messy. What matters is I'm sitting at the table and I'm reading the paper and I flip it open and somebody says, here's some awesome recipe for something. And I say, oh, I should make that. And up until now, I would do what most of you probably do up until now. You flip the page and you forget about it and you want to make it a week from now and it's gone and you can't find it anymore. I pull out my phone, take the picture, and a week from now I go, hey, I should make that thing. Not only that, I do it standing in the supermarket. I go, ooh, what was that thing? And I've got ingredients and I buy things at the store. I do that all the time now. I go and I say, shoot, I want to make mulligatawny soup. And I've typed it in and I go and I'm walking in the supermarket and I pull out my ingredients. It's that type of thing happens to me all the time. I'm in that app 8 times a day, often for stuff like this. I'm somewhere weird and I want to pull my data out. This is an excellent example. Now, if I go and I look at the clients, there are versions for a ton of platforms. So there's Windows versions and Mac versions. There's versions for the PC. There's versions for your phone and your pads, Android. Everything is synced up to the cloud. And so anything I stick up in there syncs to my devices. I can search it from anywhere. So that gives me the ability now to do hard editing on a computer. If I want to type stuff, it's inconvenient. I can do it there. And now I'm walking somewhere and I just want to pull out a note. I'm sitting here. I want to look up somebody's name. It's on my phone. We've all felt pieces of that with our phones. We all save little bits of things for later. But the ability to put it all in one place, and I mean, GTD makes the point of having a single filing system. You want to know where something is? It's in the filing system. There's only one place to look for it. You look for it, it's there. That, married with excellent search, married with automatic sync, makes it absolutely fabulous. One of the first things I started doing in Evernote was my logbooks. I had an engineering logbook. I've kept logbooks since I first started engineering. The idea was that if something ever happened, you could always go back to your logbook and you could look at the history of why you did something, or you could prove you had some idea. If you're trying to make a patent dispute, you could say, I had an idea on this day. But it wasn't searchable. I couldn't carry it with me. It wasn't backed up. At some point, I realized this is just totally wrong. I've got a better tool. And I took my notebook. I took an X-Acto knife. I sliced all the pages out of it. I dropped it into ScanSnap, scanned them all. I could walk around the building without carrying this big, hefty book that I only write in the next page or two of anymore. I could pull pages up no matter where I was. Somebody could call me on the phone. I could be standing somewhere weird, and I could go look up the page. having that data turn mobile was a big turning point for me when I started to realize that, hey, logbook is not this thing it used to be. It's not paper anymore. Once it turned into not being paper anymore, it could turn into, hey, back in the day, we used to go take pictures of oscilloscope traces, and we'd cut them out, and we'd tape them into our logbooks. Now my log moved away from things that I scribbled into a mix of pictures and screenshots from the web and wherever source data came from. It all went into this thing, which is now a logbook. Another thing I do every day at work is we write on the whiteboard a lot. And I got to fill 2-3 whiteboards a day in the building. And often it happens that somebody comes in my office, they scribble some stuff on the whiteboard, we have a conversation, they walk away, and the next thing comes up an hour later and they got to erase the whiteboard. Well, most of us have kind of learned to take a picture of the whiteboard before we erase it, and we have that. But I take a picture and it goes into Evernote. And when somebody comes to my office a week later and they say, hey, what's that thing we were talking about? I tag it. And so Evernote's got two fundamental ways of organizing data. There are notebooks. Everything sits in a notebook of one kind or another. And there are tags, and a note can have multiple tags. And you can tag anything with a tag in any notebook. So my whiteboard notes, they may be sitting in a notebook for a specific project, or a notebook from ZII, or my incoming notebook where I haven't filed it yet, but they all have the tag whiteboard, so I can do a search for whiteboard. I get every single whiteboard pretty much that I've ever drawn. I take pictures of them all before I erase them. I go in and mine that regularly. Now, do I mine 100% of it? No. Do I mine 2 or 3% of it? Yes. Did I cause a big mess? No. It still all fits on my phone. It's not cluttering space on my desk. The cost of gathering all my data and mining the things that I need is very, very small. Another use case is travel stuff. I took a cruise recently, and I've done this a number of times now. We're going on a trip, and it's a place to go plop stuff related to the trip. So in my travel folder went the PDF of the cruise of the map of the ship. That all got synced up before I go. Everything is local on my phone, so even without having internet access out on the ship, I'm walking around, I go, hey, how do I get there? Boom, pull the thing up. Boarding tickets, boarding passes, itineraries, when is somebody going to pick me up, what are phone numbers for people taking care of my house, everything goes in. It doesn't matter. It's very easy to capture, throw it in there, tag it, you can get to everything you're looking for. Projecty kinds of things. An excellent use case is if you're doing home renovation or something like that. This kind of stuff comes up for me all the time. I'm working on a kitchen remodel. Haven't started pieces of it yet, but you're walking around and there's all kinds of weird pieces. I've got estimates from places. I've got quotes for things. I'm walking down the aisle at Home Depot and I go, hey, here's a set of handles that I like. I don't know what I'm going to pick yet, but I go take a couple of pictures, and I take pictures of the handles, and I take pictures of the costing of the handles, and I throw them in. And now when I'm ready to go pick things out, I've got everything again in one place. I can capture from anywhere where I am, and I can access the data from anywhere I am. Any kind of collaborative project like that, or where you're doing something, you're writing an article for publication, or you're putting together a talk for Erwin's birthday. Of course, I have an E30 notebook, and of course it has all the data for this presentation. I've been popping things in there for the last 3 months, and when it came time to put this thing together, pull, munge, but it's just perfect for this time. Lists of stuff. If you're like me, you've probably got a list on your phone of books that you want to read or movies that you want to see. I would keep those things in weird places, but now I have one, and I throw all those things in there. This is one of my possibly embarrassing slides. I don't know, they have some stupid things up there. But when I bump into people and they say, oh, you got to listen to this album, or oh, you got to see this movie, boom, I got a place to put it, and I'll go and I'll troll this thing and say, hey, what am I going to go rent when my Netflix disc comes back? I've got a place to shove all that data. There's a piece of it that's not remarkable. It's words in a page, and there's nothing much to that. But that all my words are in the same place, and they're super searchable, and I have access to them from anywhere where I am, and I can add to them or edit them or delete them from anywhere I am. It's magical. It's like Star Trek. It's just absolutely fabulous. It feeds my data hoarding. Guitar music. And potentially even sheet music. I don't have much sheet music in here yet, but I've got a bunch of guitar music that used to sit in a 3-ring binder with dog-eared pages, and then I'd go out somewhere on a camping trip, and I wouldn't have it with me. I've shoved all my music since then in and thrown the binder away, and now I've got it wherever I end up. I end up in weird places. You end up at somebody's house, and they've got a guitar, and you say, oh, I want to play that song, but I don't remember it anymore. It's sitting in my pocket. I pull up my phone and play guitar songs out of my pocket. That's ridiculously powerful. Another cool thing that Evernote does is it tags your notes automatically with their location. And when you think about the way the information goes in your head, the way you try to recall stuff, it maps very well to the way your brain works, or certainly the way that my brain works. If I'm trying to remember somebody's name or something something that I ate, I first have to say, well, where was I? I was on vacation, I was in this place, and those mental kind of associations start to help draw links so you can pull that thing out. Well, I do the same thing now spatially in Evernote. And somebody asked me if I was going to do the beer example, so here's the beer example. I was in Salt Lake City where my family lives, and Salt Lake City is not the place you think you go for a beer, but I happened to be there and I happened to have a beer, and it was really good. It was a very hoppy, strange beer, and at the time I thought, like I do from time to time, hey, this is a thing that I want to find again, I'll take a picture of it with my phone. But I take a picture and I shove it in Evernote, and now it's tagged with location. And I go back to think of it, and the only thing I can remember is I was in Salt Lake City when that happened. And so I pull up Evernote, and I pull up the atlas, and boom, I've got notes up in Salt Lake City, and I can see, hey, there's 3 things that I captured when I was up in Salt Lake. And I go and I zoom in, and I only get this far before, because it's not over near those notes, he draws a little icon and pops it up, and boom, I've got my picture of my beer. And I remember, oh yeah, it was in the northeast corner of the city when I went and did that. It makes it very easy to go find all kinds of little weird bits of data that are now tagged with where I was. I was driving with my sister once, and we were just in the back roads around Pennsylvania where she lives, and she said something stupid. And I'm a brother, so I have to take those things and hold on to them. Those are gems that I can use for a long time forward. So she said the word humilified, and I said to myself, well, I'm never going to remember the word humilified. I'll get 2 hours away, and I'll think, she said something funny, and it kind of was a real word, and there's no way in the world I'm going to pull that word out of my head. So I wrote one of the shortest notes in my entire book. I wrote the word humilified, and I saved it. And sure enough, when I wanted to rib her 3 months later, I went and said, I don't know what that was, but I know it was driving around Pennsylvania somewhere, and I zoom around, and there's one note hovering out there in the middle of nowhere, and it says humilified. So I was able to text that to her and give her a hard time. That's my job. All right, so that's a quick run through of Evernote. We'll talk about Skitch a little bit. So Skitch was a company, they were hovering around for about 4 or 5 years before Evernote picked them up. But Evernote, they're an awesome company. If I digress for a second, the CEO is just a straight shooting fabulous guy. And his mission in life is for you to never forget anything. He is not trying to get rich, although he is doing okay. And he's not trying to make his company filthy rich. His business model is what they call freemium. But it's not freemium in a sleazy way. It's not a, hey, let me give you enough to do a little bit, give you a taste, and then to do any real work, you're going to have to pay us some money. Their business plan says 100% that their expectation is to be a 100-year company, that your data is owned by you forever, that they have no rights to it whatsoever, that they will always make it accessible to you, that if they die or they go away, you've got your data in a form that's easy to import into the next tool, that if you want to leave them and go somewhere else, your data is all in a form that you can take it and you can move it into another tool. They feel very strongly. You own your data, they are here to serve you. Their model says they're going to spend their entire life as a company with maybe 10% or so of their users being quote-unquote premium users. It's $50 or something. You think I would have looked that number up before I gave a talk on Evernote? I don't remember what it is, but it's $50 or something a year. And it's got some differentiating attributes. You get a higher upload allowance, you can search through some other kinds of notes, you can do some other kinds of attachments, but the basic free version of Evernote is super, super powerful. I ran in the free version for a year and a half, 2 years. And the only reason I'm paying them now is because I love them to death and I think they deserve my money. I could run just fine in the free version. But their model says they can exist as a company on 5 or 10%, and that's just fine. And they've structured themselves so they will continue to live as a company on 5 or 10%. And they want very badly for everybody who wants to be able to use it and be able to use it well. And so they want students to use it. They want people in impoverished countries to use it. They want the feedback from people that are using it and not paying for it. You get decent, very good tech support. They support the free version, and they are committed to existing on a small paying user base. So their view of the world was that they were missing a piece, which is the sketch piece. That once you've gone paperless and you've moved everything in, you need a way of communicating ideas. And even inside their own company, they for a while did what we in engineering call eating your own dog food, which means you take the tool that you want to push out to the public and you use it to do your own business and just keep the tires on and make sure it's real. Evernote does that themselves inside their own company. They use Evernote to do their business. Their lead IT guy uses it to keep SQL queries and stuff. And so if you listen to those guys talk, they're just constantly swimming in their own tool and making it better and learning by their own experience. So they recognized this need to go be able to annotate things and bought this company Sketch and have since integrated it strongly into Evernote. So the concept behind Sketch is to say that we as human beings are used to communicating by drawing pictures to each other, picking up a stick and scribbling in the dirt. That's a very effective way of communicating ideas. And so what they fundamentally want to do, the Sketch, is let you grab anything, scribble on it, and hand it to somebody else. So built into Sketch is a screenshot tool that'll let you screenshot anything on your screen and then scribble on it. But also any note that's in Evernote, you can scribble on and it will maintain the scribble. That includes PDFs. And so if you've got PDF documents that in our business, a lot of times people send us stuff to review. We can open the PDF, scribble in it, close it, and those sketch-like scribblings that look like this, colored arrows and stuff, stay in the document. So in ZII, we recently moved into our new space, and they sent out maps of the building, and we have a bunch of conference rooms, and we gave them all new names, and we've been up there for maybe a month, and the names aren't on the doors yet, so nobody knows where the conference rooms are. And so I pulled the map up, opened Sketch, tossed names on all the conference rooms, saved it as a PDF, sent it to everybody in the company, and it's one of my best-selling pieces of work in this world. I walk through the building, and people have my little map taped to the wall of their cubicle so they can see where the conference rooms are. Me personally, I wouldn't put it on paper and tape it on my wall, but I'm very pleased that it turned into a useful tool for people. In my business, we're often reviewing things. So people send documents and things that I have to go evaluate because we want to release them. So here's just an example of stuff I found sitting in my Sketch. We're working on a new mechanical unit, and we're working on the plastics, and so somebody sent me something, and I wanted to go say, hey, take these screw holes and move them back, and hey, can we open up the plastics here? So I can rotate that thing around my screen, take a screenshot on it with Sketch, throw a couple arrows on there, and send it, convey my ideas in a way that's much easier than it ever would have been to try to scribble things in paper or try to tell somebody over the phone. There's a subtle thing going on in here too, which is if you've ever tried to annotate a picture or you pay a lot of attention to subtitles in movies, there's a trick to doing subtitles, which is you actually want to have a dark font with kind of a white outline around it or vice versa. It's a stupid little nit, but it's actually really important. If I'm going to go throw words on top of things, if you've ever tried to do this kind of annotation with some other tool, and it's a picture like this, and you're throwing words, you can't read the words, the dark words when they cross dark things, or the light words when they cross light things. So that's kind of just baked into Sketch. They realized that, and now I've got this very cluttered image with very cluttered things on it. I can throw words on there, and they're very easy to read with no thought. Open it up, type, done. It just does that out of the box. That's their expectation. Just another screenshot of something somebody sent me trying to say, hey, these numbers should be those numbers. Screenshot, circle, 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 email, done. This kind of thing happens in our business all the time. I've got drawings where somebody's sent the drawing out for review, And it's easy when there's a couple changes, but when something gets complicated, normally I got to go scribble all over it and go down to somebody's office and talk through the changes. Now, pop it open in Sketch, throw a couple arrows on, throw all my notes on, send them a doc that they can review on their screen. It's been absolutely fabulous for that kind of thing. So that's Sketch in a nutshell. Let's talk about printers for a sec, or scanner. This is the Fujitsu ScanSnap. Its claim to fame is it does about, let's see, 30 pages a minute, so about 2 seconds to do a page. It works very, very well, does about 50 pages, scans both sides at one time, 300 or 600 DPI, it'll do color, it'll do black and white. But this is just a normal part of my workflow now at home. So I've got one sitting at home. When my bills come in and stuff, I sit there, I pop everything on the scanner, I scan it, I back it up, it all goes into Shredder. So I have one stack of paper nominally on my desk, which is incoming things, and when it's time to go process them, I take them, I scan them, I do what I gotta do with them, they all go into the Shredder, and I have zero paper anymore. There's very, very, very few things that I file anymore. For a while, this was kind of scary. Taking a doc out of an envelope, scanning it, and then shredding it turns my stomach a little bit the first time that I did it. But yeah, if you scan it, and then you back up, and then you shred it, I got a reasonable amount of confidence that I can trust my backup and I can get back to that thing. So the butterflies went away. At this point, I'm just very, very comfortable with scanning things and throwing them into the shredder. I do it all the time. At work, I solved this with our photocopiers. So it turns out that our photocopiers and most photocopiers these days have a feature where they'll take your document, turn it into a PDF, and they'll email it someone. And so all of our copiers at work do that. And so at work, when people hand me paper, which always seems crazy, I'll take it. First thing I do is I throw it in there, scan it, get it off my desk, and shred it. For backups, a lot of people don't know about this thing. A lot of people know, if you're a Mac person, you know about Time Machine. Time Machine is fabulous. Backup is so easy, so easy to do. If there's anybody in this room who has a laptop and you're not backing up your data, you're absolutely completely out of your mind. I have to tell you that. It's really, really, really easy. So go get that, Acronis. If you're running a Windows machine, it's 30, 40 bucks. It's totally worth it. You go get a USB drive, they're cheap, you get a 2 terabyte drive for under 100 bucks. You plug it in, you run this thing, it will back up your entire machine, absolutely everything. You're not only backing up your data, you're backing up all the work it took you to set up your machine and set up your OS and all that stuff. Somebody broke into my house about a year ago this month, and stole a couple of laptops. And they stole my daughter's Macs. So I had 2 Macs go missing and a PC go missing. I had a Acronis backup of the PC. I had Time Machine backups of the Mac. You just don't really realize how awesome and powerful your backup software is until your daughter, who has lost her laptop, you can go down to the Apple Store, you can pick up another one with insurance money, you can load her image on there, and the kitty cats that were on her desktop are on the new laptop like nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened. Totally taken care of. That's just fabulous. It's really, really, really easy to do. So definitely do that. I have to do this because all of my stuff is in here now. I have to back it up. For displays, one of the important things I found when I get paperless is that if you do paper, you're used to having a lot of things on your desk kind of in front of you. And so I would have a page of 2 things that I was reviewing, and I was putting the data into a new thing. I needed this ability to put multiple things in front of me, so I could look at one thing and look at another thing and combine them and edit somewhere else. And so I went to a model that says, if I'm not going to have any paper, I need more screens. And so I went to 2, and then I went to 3, and then I went to 4, which seemed a little crazy for a while, but I'm really very, very happy with 4 now that I put them like this. So I totally recommend 4 monitors in a triangle configuration, diamond configuration. This is just absolutely fabulous for me. But this is my Starship Enterprise bridge of a desk now, but that's what allows me to have no paper. I spend most of my day with tons of stuff open on all 4 screens. One of the things that let me do that very easily on the PC was this thing. It's, again, 40 bucks or so. It attaches to USB. You can put up to 6 of them on your machine and hang multiple monitors on a PC extremely easily. On the Mac, it's easier than that. Macs have ports for, what is it, Lightning, what's it called? Lightning something. Anyway, you can get adapters for the Mac that bust that out. This is USB to VGA, so the data rate is kind of slow. You can't watch videos on it and stuff. But if you're looking at documents, which is what I do all day, I can hang 6 monitors off my screen, piece of cake. That's it for screens. 43 minutes, darn close. So, I pulled together all the things that I recommended here. I put them up on a tiny URL there, so we're E30-Ishmael. If you're looking for any of that stuff. But of all those things up there, Evernote's probably the most important thing. It's super easy to get hold of. If you guys remember one thing from today, it's that even if you live in Southern California, you should keep an umbrella in the trunk of your car. But if you remember 2 things, go get Evernote. It's super, super easy to do. Throw it on your machine, throw it on your laptop, and fight the whale with it. Thank you very much.